Okay, I think we're about ready to start. So hello everyone and welcome to day 2 of the Startup Workshops session. So I'm Yasser Abdulaziz and today we're going to be talking about how to build your technology startup in Bahrain. So we've covered a bit of the basics of how to start from idea stage in terms of finding your idea until building your MVP up to building your early product, let's say. Today we're going to be talking a bit more advanced in terms of how to slightly scale your product, in terms of how to build your team, how to find your partners, how to get fundraising and investment, and as well as how to acquire customers and scale your product basically. We're also going to be having a guest speaker. So Ali Al-Majdoub from MEVP, which is a VC that is operating in the GCC, is going to be joining us at around 7:30. So he's going to be talking for around 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're going to have a 5-minute Q&A session with him. So if anyone has any questions for him, do prepare that in advance so that we can utilize the best of his time as well. We're going to have a small prayer break like we did yesterday in around 15 to 20 minutes probably. So whoever wants to pray, we're going to have a small break in order to do that as well. So just before we start, a couple of disclaimers like we mentioned yesterday. So this session is being recorded and certain content might be shared. So by being present, you agree that you might appear on photographs or videos taken during the workshop. This workshop is also, and the content does not reflect the views of the Department of State, the United States government, or any strategic partner. It has been prepared by me, the presenter mainly. So like I mentioned yesterday, the Startup Workshops sessions has 3 different workshops that the guys are doing. The first is how to build and manage a business in Bahrain, which is more general and related towards, let's say, more traditional businesses. The second, which I am presenting, is how to build a technology startup in Bahrain. It does cover a lot of what is mentioned or discussed in the first session. But is mainly geared towards technology startup. So if you either wanna build a website, a mobile app, or even integrate some technology within your business, it also gives you a lot of concepts that you can use in any type of business. And then the third session is how to grow your Bahraini business using technology, which is a very, very technical session and goes in depth and in detail about technology and specific. So there will be 2 more workshops after mine. So the technology workshop is going to be in August. And then how to build and manage a business in Bahrain is going to be in September. So do follow and do check out the Startup Magazine website in order to stay tuned and to also be aware about what's happening in terms of the events. So Startup Magazine are also doing some networking events. So you have gatherings and panels, which are usually happening across the month and with different timings as well and different participants. Again, you can follow the Startup Magazine social media and they'll keep you up to date. Startup Huddles is a bit different. Startup Huddle is basically a group session where you can basically meet like-minded people. You can present your concept or your idea or your company, and then you can basically start getting feedback. You can start discussing your concept with deep insights from them. So it's definitely, to me, a must-go or a recommended session to attend. So in terms of the agenda, like I mentioned, yesterday we talked about more general terms in terms of starting your own business and getting your idea. Today will be a bit more advanced in terms of how to scale it and take it to the next level and what to look out for. That's going to be the first part. We're going to have a guest speaker in the middle, who is Ali Al-Majdoub. And then after that, we're going to continue with our session. The last hour of today's session is going to be dedicated to you guys directly. So we're going to open the mic and you guys will be able to talk and for others to hear you as well, in order for you to present yourself, what your startup is, or if you have any idea, just general background. Whoever wants to chip in can just introduce themselves, what they're doing, what challenges they have faced, what stories they might want to share with others as well. And it's going to be a very open-ended and interactive session where you guys can talk to each other. You can ask me questions directly, and we can just have a conversation. Like I mentioned yesterday, ideally we would have wanted to do this on a physical level. So for me to get to see you guys and for you guys to get to see and meet each other. But these are our circumstances. So I wanted to dedicate a huge part of today's session for that interactive part. So I definitely strongly encourage each and every one of you to do interact, do speak. This is a great opportunity, as we saw yesterday, to meet other people who might be able to help you, to maybe even meet people who might become friends or colleagues or even partners at one point. And we do have people with different backgrounds. So we had a couple of people who have their own companies, either lawyers or development agencies. We have people who want to get into startups and ideas. And we also had some business owners as well. So it's a great opportunity for you guys to get to know each other and to benefit from each other as well. I wanted to talk about Startup Bahrain in the beginning. So Startup Bahrain is basically the Bahrain ecosystem for innovative digital startups. Startup Bahrain was founded by a group of different stakeholders in the ecosystem in Bahrain. So it's comprised of startups themselves, corporates, investors, accelerators, incubators, educational institutions, and the Bahraini government. So I think in Bahrain, we're really lucky to have such movement or such an initiative that brings all the different stakeholders. And it's something that we definitely love, me personally as a startup, in order for me to have the opportunity to sit even with people from the Bahraini government, from the Economic Development Board, from Mumtalakat, from Bahrain Development Bank, Temkeen, the ministries. We do have, and Startup Bahrain does organize sessions where all of these stakeholders are sitting on one table, and we can just have a conversation on where the Bahraini startup ecosystem is. What are we facing as startups? What are the challenges that we're facing in terms of the government, in terms of ministry, in terms of law, in terms of legislation, whatever we need. And we have seen, to be honest, a lot of the feedback that we give them do come, and there are official legislations that do come based on the conversations that we're having. If anyone is into, like, either has a business or either wants to start a business, I would definitely recommend you guys to check out the Startup Bahrain website. So they have a lot of information about the ecosystem Bahrain in terms of incubators, accelerators, investors. They offer you some perks in terms of discounts, credits from AWS and such entities, the events, the networking, details about Bahrain, data, statistics, information. So it's definitely a one-stop, let's say, shop for you to get yourself familiarized with how the ecosystem in Bahrain looks and get quick access to resources that are very, very relevant to you guys. Okay, so we're going to be taking a small prayer break. So it's 6:43 now. I think we can come back at 6:50, and then we can start with the presentation, basically. We'll be starting in 1 minute. Okay, I think we're about ready to start. So like we did yesterday, if you guys have any questions during the presentation, do write them either in the Q&A section, which I will keep checking every now and then, as well as the chat. So I'll be checking both. And we're going to have a couple of stoppages for questions. And like I mentioned, the last hour of today's session is going to be revolved around you guys. So if anyone wants to basically share their own experience in terms of starting their own business or some challenges that they faced or certain questions that they want answered, do prepare that and we will allow you guys to talk and using your mic as well. And I definitely want each and every one of you to, I strongly recommend you to participate in order to interact with the others as well. The first thing I wanted to talk about today is building your team. Because essentially once you start expanding your business, you're gonna need to start hiring some team members. And team members can be one of two things. They can either be partners or founding partners. So people who will come with you as a partner from the beginning and build the business with you. Or they can also be employees. So employees can be people who you hire and pay them salary in order to do certain tasks or handle certain projects for you. The first thing I wanted to talk about is partners and founding team. And to me, this is one of the most important, let's say, milestones or breakstones for any project. So investors usually prefer to invest in projects that have more than one founder, not because it's best practice or that it's a must, but because they realize that for one person to start a company and then scale it to a huge level, it can be very challenging. This is due to like a couple of factors. One is that skill sets. So you're not going to find someone who has all the different skill sets required to build a company. So you can be amazing at marketing, you can be amazing in business and understanding your business and how to make money, but you won't have the technical expertise to grow the business properly. Or you might be a very technical person, so you know how development works, you can code yourself, you can hire a coding team as well, but you might lack some of the business skills that are required in order to grow your business. So essentially, it's always good to find someone to start the project with. Having said that, it's better to start it yourself than with the wrong type of partner. So how can you find the right partner and what should you look out for in terms of finding a partner? So the first thing I would say is look for people who have skill sets that you're lacking. So you need to know what are you good at and what are you not good at. And we all have certain areas that we're not very good at. If we're talking about a technology startup, a lot of people here are good at business, they understand the business concept, but they don't know how to build it as a technical level. Or it could be the other way around. So me personally, once I found the idea and found what I wanted to work on, my priority was to find someone who understands all of these things that I don't understand. And this is where I met Ahmed, my co-founder, and then he was handling literally half of the business. So he was handling the product, hiring developers, finding developers, managing the developers. He was handling marketing. He was handling how the product should go. And then I was handling the things I was good at. So I was good at finance and numbers. I was good at understanding what do people who want to play football want or need. I was good at also understanding how the market is operating because I was part of our own target audience as well. So what are people thinking? What do they need? What works? What doesn't work? I had a pretty good idea at it. Especially in the beginning, you'll find yourself as a founder wearing so many different hats. And one day you'll find yourself first working on marketing, then working on finance, then working on sales, then working on design, and then working on some legal contracts that you'll draft yourself. And this is an important skill set. You will develop it with time. So we shouldn't have all of these figured out from the beginning. With time, with research, as long as you have the mentality to keep learning, to research, and to do things on your own, because in a startup, you are doing everything on your own. you can't count on a different department or a manager or an owner to come in and do the work on your behalf. You have to do it yourself. If you don't, it's not going to move. So the first thing is that you need to be aware about your shortcomings as a founder, and then try to find someone who has the expertise that you lack in. Second, and maybe as important, is just because you find someone who's technical doesn't always mean that they're the right match. So in a lot of cases, and sometimes I do find it funny, but finding a partner in a startup or starter company is very similar to finding a husband or wife. It's like a marriage. So there has to be a certain dynamic, there has to be a certain chemistry where you guys can get along, you guys can work together, you guys can carry the work on each other, you guys can have tough conversations together. So you have to be very aware about that. Don't rush, don't jump into a partnership. And we'll talk about how you can protect yourself as a founder and the company as well. But it's also important for you to understand how that person works. So it's always good to maybe start with someone on a very small scale. It could be usually I prefer not to work with friends and family, because once you know someone and you have a personal relationship with them, it can get difficult to draw that line between work and business and having that personal relationship. And the second thing is that it can work, but then if something happens with work, there's a potential that might damage that relationship forever. And I've seen it happen with people who are either family members or really close friends, and they've been friends for their whole life. So doesn't mean that you shouldn't, but that's the general rule that I like to apply myself. My recommendation is that once you identify someone who could be a right match, and you have these early conversations with them to get a sense of how excited they are, how much they believe in the business, why they want to do this, why they want to contribute this. And you both have to have that conversation together. You should start working on a very small scale in order for you to understand how that person works. Are they suitable to what you want to do or not? And by doing that early stage, let's say experimentation together, you guys will find out what the dynamic is like between you guys. And are you guys able to work together, or is it something that you simply can't see yourself doing? Third thing is that once you get a partner, I don't care if it's your mom, if it's your sister, if it's your father, whatever it is, sign a partnership agreement between you and that person. I've seen it happen with people who are literally family and people I personally know who got together in a business, but then it got so ugly that it reached a point where they have court cases and there is a lawsuit between each other because there was a huge disagreement on how the business was happening. I'm sure there was some misunderstanding, and then someone at one point thought that the other person might be stealing. Could be or could be not. Yeah, it could not be. So even though they are family, they have reached a point where it got ugly and it did go to court. So as long as you sign a clear partnership agreement between you and that other person, it can be something, you don't need lawyers. You don't need to draft a 20-page agreement. Like when we started, we literally drafted a one-pager with 10 clauses that said that Yasser Ahmed are getting into a partnership to start X business, and then it will have, so I will contribute this amount and he will contribute this amount. And then in case one of us decides to leave or go, this is what's going to happen. And the other person would have to repay whatever I invested in the beginning. And then just like very general terms. This is not per se the best legal practice to do, but it is legally binding, and you can use it as proof in a court of law. There has been court cases in Bahrain that were settled based on WhatsApp conversations. So any written agreement between you two, any written proof between you two, and as a proof that something happened or did not happen, or some sort of conflict happened, that paper you signed is your reference to protect you or protect also them. So even if you're getting in a partnership with your mom, just do it on a formal basis. Just draft one paper, you can write it with your hand, you don't need to print it, and just both of you sign on it. Fourth is that if you happen to start or have the idea yourself and then find someone you want to join as a partner, even if you have spent the last 2-3 years building that business. If you want someone to come in as a partner or as a founding member, you have to always offer them equity. So you always have to offer them something that they will own within the company. Because founding members and directors are very, very important to your growth. They're worth so much more than actual salary or whatever financial agreement that you guys have. And it's also important for them to feel that they are part of this, because you are getting technically someone who's gonna throw everything away in their life and focus on that company with you. So if they don't have something to look out for, if they don't feel that they own at least part of the company, it's not gonna work out. Eventually they're gonna have to find something else, or they're not gonna be as motivated to grow it as you would as it's your own company. So I wrote always in capital, because I've met people who have companies who wanted to find partners, but then they say, but it's my idea, but it's my company, but I built this. It doesn't matter. You're asking someone to basically throw everything they have with you. So it's only natural that you need to incentivize them properly to join you. And it's different incentivizing them with salary, because at one point they might see that the salary is not worth it, versus them owning a piece of the pie. A question that you might ask me now is that, what if I give someone 20% of my company and they decide to leave tomorrow? That share of my company is gone. This is what you can do next, is that you can vest their shares. And the next slide is going to explain to you what vesting is. So vesting is something that you can do in order to protect yourself from any, let's say, conflicts that happen. So what vesting usually means is that if you promise to give someone a share in your company, so assuming you give someone 25% of your company as equity, and you vested over 4 years. What does vesting mean? Vesting means that if the person leaves any time between 0 years to 1 year, so even if they leave after 11 months and 29 days, and they leave the company, they literally get 0 shares. They don't get any equity, they don't get any shares. If they continue for 1 to 2 years with you, then they will get, because it's vested over 4 years, so it's usually the full share over the number of years. Since we're talking about 4 years now, if they leave between any time between 1 to 2 years, it means that they will only get 25% of their equity. If they leave after 2 years, they will get 50%. And then if they leave after 3 years, they will get 75%. And if they complete 4 years with you without any conflicts, without any problems, at that point, they will have earned that 100%. So vesting protects you and protects them as well in terms of maintaining their dedication. If anything happens in between, you're protected, the company is protected, and as well as they are protected in terms of they know exactly what they're getting, and if they give their effort and best effort, they will get their full shares after a certain number of years. 4 years is not mandatory. It's usually the best practice to do it, but you can vest over 2 years, you can vest over 3 years, you can vest over 10 years. It depends on you and the other person. So in terms of the next step is that whenever you have a founding team or a partner, you have to assign clear responsibilities, and you have to assign KPIs as well. Especially in the early days, you have to have those titles, let's say. Titles don't really mean a lot as a name, but someone has to be the CEO of the company. Someone has to be the CEO of a company. Someone has to be the CTO of the company. What that does is that once you start building the company and once you agree on these things in the beginning, it's much easier to then grow the company with a clear head. But if you start a company and you don't even have a CEO between you and your partner, what happens after 2 years when you start to get employees and you get investors in, and someone has to take that role? There might be a conflict 2 years down the line where someone might feel, or both of you might feel, that you require that title, let's say, and at that point it could lead to an argument that can be solved. So again, having that tough conversation in the beginning is important. how do you decide who's the CEO, who's the CTO? Usually you would have certain characteristics that the CEO should have. So the CEO should know how to basically set the strategy of the company, should know where the company should head. Obviously, both of you are going to be involved, especially in the beginning. Both of you will be doing CEO responsibility. Both of you are going to be doing CTO responsibility. But in terms of certain characteristics that you guys think one person might have over the other, that will decide basically what that person will do. And then after you do that, you have to set clear responsibilities in terms of who does what. So if I'm the CEO, so I'll be setting the vision and the strategy. I'll be handling sales, for example. I'll be handling part of the marketing. I'll be handling fundraising. I might handle parts of the technical team. And then you as CTO, you can handle the tech part, you can handle developing the product, you can handle anything to do with the app and the development. If you're a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, then in that case, you will be handling 1, 2, 3, 4. Setting these doesn't mean that tomorrow, if you come to me and ask me to do something that is not my responsibility, I'm not going to do that. Because like I said, in the beginning, both of you, or even if you guys are 3, you're going to be doing everything all the time together as a company and as you grow. It's only once you start scaling and growing your company, that's when a bit you're going to start distinguishing your roles a bit more, because then you're going to have a team under you, you're going to have more stuff to do. So it's important for you guys to really focus on what each person is good at. Last thing is with partners, don't be afraid to have tough conversations. So a lot of people try to tread this carefully in terms of, oh, I don't want to upset them, or I'm too afraid that they might get upset and leave, or whatever happens. You need to have tough conversations with yourself. You need to have tough conversations with your partner in terms of how the company is going, where the company is heading. If you find that the company is not heading towards where it should be, someone has to have that tough conversation of deciding what should we do next. Should we just close it down? Is it not worth it? Should we continue? Should we grow? Should we pivot? But it's important to have these tough conversations, to have it openly, and to both understand where each one of you stands from, because essentially this is a marriage and you are doing this together. And you're going to be spending so much time with that person or those people than with anyone else, than with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, your work colleagues. You're going to be spending most of your time with these people. So if you can't have these tough conversations, it's going to be really difficult to grow the company further. Next is team members and employees. So once you start growing your business, you're going to have to start hiring. And hiring is a bit tricky, especially with startups, because you can't afford to have people who just follow and just wait for you to move and do things. At a startup, especially your first 2 to 3 hires, you need people who are really, really into the project, who understand what needs to be done. Some people, like people who would not want an 8 to 5 job, who would work on weekends if required, who would work in evenings if required, because that's what the startup needs at that point. And everyone has to put the same amount of dedication and effort. Doesn't mean that they're going to work 24/7 literally, but it means that if something comes up and if they need to be there, they will be prepared to be there. Obviously, certain roles can be more flexible and time-oriented, but always try to find people who are really flexible in what they want to do and who can basically cover whenever needed. The first point is that culture comes first. And if you're starting a company, you should have your own culture on how people should interact within it as a team. So obviously you're starting this because you want to do things your own way and you want to implement certain values that you feel are important for you. So it's always important for you to define what these values are. What does your company culture look like? What would you want it to be? And then finding people who would fit that culture and fit that vision, basically. Because once you bring someone who doesn't fit that, 1, they're not going to get along. 2, there's going to be a lot of conflict between you and them, or even between them and other employees. The second is that between team members as well, once you start getting a culture in, it's very, very important to maintain it. Because if you get with a small team, once you get people who can be toxic, who can be negative, they can really affect other team members. They can really affect how the whole company grows and moves. And we've had, to be honest, one employee out of 5 to 10 who manages to really hold the whole company back because they're playing an important role and because they're negatively affecting other people and nobody likes to interact with them. So it's very important to make sure that whoever you hire fits the culture and also people who believe in the idea. So especially with startups, what would make someone work weekends or work at night or work at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. if required? It's because they're genuinely excited. They're seeing things grow. They're learning. They're part of that experience. So it's important to also have that in mind and also make sure that this applies to them. People who really want to either learn, either want to really love the concept, they like it. So that's when things get aligned. Third is you need to find team members who will grow with your company. And with that, I mean, try to avoid getting people who are, in my opinion, over, let's say 35 or 40. It doesn't mean that it's a rule, but find people who are young, find people who are fresh graduates, find people who have worked in a corporate and want to change the mood, because they will have that eagerness to learn, to grow, to not have any previous biases, and to want to grow with the company. And as the company grows, they're growing with it as well, and they're always being motivated and challenging to stay the same. Fourth is empower your team members. So as you grow your team and as you start basically delegating more stuff, you need to, don't try to micromanage what these people do. You're a small company, you're a small startup, and you need those people who are handling really important roles to feel empowered enough that they're not just waiting for you to bark orders and to tell them what to do. They go and start doing things on their own. They start critiquing, they start improving, they start changing stuff. So you need to empower them in order for them to take whatever role that they have been given and to take it to the next step. And like partners, you can always offer them what they call an ESOP. So you can always offer them stock options that are vested as well. So you can give them smaller shares in the company for them to feel that they do belong. In a lot of cases, you can get people who are experienced, but obviously as a startup, you can't afford to pay them 600, 800, 1,000 DD. So in order to compensate for the salary that they will be getting in the first couple of years as you're going, you make them part of the company and you offer them small shares and equity to feel that they belong and they can improve. So as you grow your company, you'll find yourself that your role as a founder is changing a lot. So in the early days, like I mentioned, you're going to have to do everything on your own. You're going to have to have control and literally have your hand in every single thing happening within the company. But then once you start scaling your company and the work gets more busy and you get more customers and you have more team members, you can't continue to do that. Your role will start changing slowly and you will have to adapt to a new role. And usually it happens in a very quick manner. So it's not like you're going to do one role for 4 years and then you're going to have 4 other years to do it. So I found myself from being a 3-man team for around a year and a half to reaching up to 20, 25 employees in the space of 6 months to a year. So you can't do what you were doing before because you have more people coming in who need coaching, who need guidance, who need basically mentorship, who will ask questions, who will do things differently than how you do. And as a founder, it's always different for you versus someone coming into the company. You've founded this from the beginning. You've written all the rules. So you know it in the back of your head. But people who are coming in are pretty different. So you have to learn to delegate. So you have to start delegating tasks to certain team members. And like I said earlier, you have to empower them to take tough decisions if they need to. And this is what startups are all about. They're going to make wrong decisions. They're going to cost you money here and there. As long as you make sure that it's a learning curve for them, so they do a mistake and learn, and they're not punished or they're not basically put down in order to not make their own decisions. They learn and they move on and they make different mistakes. But you have to distinguish between learning and between what I call sloppiness and not paying attention. So it's a fine line between both. So you'll be turning from a doer, someone who does and does everything on their own, to someone who starts delegating, coaching, mentoring people. And you find yourself basically sitting with those people in order for them to get that understanding of how you're doing things and how these things develop, basically. You need to manage the flow of information. So I've found after a while that once people start not understanding or having a clear vision of how the company is moving, that can affect their work and what they're doing, and having the clarity of why they're doing what they're doing. So they always have to have a why. Why are we doing this? Where are we going to reach? Once they do that, and once they see that image that you have, and it's your job to communicate it, then it's at that point where they will start making decisions that helps the company grow in the same direction. First is that you need to face yourself. So you need to basically evaluate what you've been doing, and self-evaluate how you're doing things, and have tough conversations with yourself, and even ask yourself, am I the right person? Should I find someone else who can do X amount of work better than me in that field? Should I hire a CEO in my own company, and then I might take another role? So it's important for you to do that as well. And the fifth is that you need to start learning how and where to spend your time, because you're moving from doing and from basically handling everything on your own. As your team grows, you can't afford to keep doing that, because there will be other more important stuff. So for you to start coaching some people in order for them to do the job maybe even better than you, that will be important than you actually spending these 2 hours doing. So if you spend an hour a week coaching that person, they're going to be able to do the job at a much better rate. And as you scale and have more team members, 10 people can do better than one person at that job. Lastly, with your basically team, you don't need to always hire full-timers. As a startup, like we mentioned, you always have to bootstrap. You always have to be aware about your expenses and how they are. So it's very important for you as well to be mindful of cost. And this is where you can basically work and assign a lot of tasks to freelancers and part-time employees. You can literally find freelancers for anything that you have in mind. You'll find someone who's willing to do it through these platforms. And you'll find people from different countries. You'll find people in India, people from Ukraine, people with different backgrounds, with different experience, with different styles, with different, let's say, deadlines, prices. So it's important for you to learn how to utilize these very early on. Because, for example, if I want to hire a graphic designer, I'm going to have to hire someone and pay them a salary of 450 BD, which is the minimum. And then even if it's subsidized on Temkeen, I might have to pay net 200 BD, which is about $500. On Upwork, I can find the same level of designer, let's say, or even more experienced, who could be in India, who can do the same job for $100. And you can also find things to do like market research, like website development, like feasibility studies, like budgeting, like anything you can imagine. You'll find people who are willing to do it online, and you can set your budget to find different experiences of different people. So there are 5 main websites you can find online. You have Upwork, you have Fiverr, you have Freelancer, Skyward, and Bot. These are all international platforms that allows you to find freelancers remotely. And you can always, if you like someone that you worked with as a freelancer or as a part-time employee, you always have the option to eventually offer them a full-time job, because you've seen their work, you like it. So it's easier to make that transition. The 6th is why I put it in bold is Majra. So Majra is a Bahraini platform for hiring. And they've recently, a couple of weeks ago, introduced something called Gigs, which allows you to basically find freelancers who are in Bahrain. So some roles might require someone who's more local. For example, for graphic design, you want someone who speaks the language, who understands what they're doing. So in that case, it's better for you to find someone who might be local. Or even if you don't feel comfortable communicating with someone outside and you want to sit with someone face-to-face, you can find someone through Majra as well. So my personal experience with team and hiring, to be honest, I've had to, so during my work, I was never, when I was working corporate, I was never in a position where I was managing a team or hiring people. I was only part of the team because I was just a fresh graduate. So I've had to go through that route. I've had to learn a lot, and I did a lot of mistakes as well. But maybe the couple of takeaways that I can give you guys is that Right now, whenever I'm looking to hire someone, I always look at one, would they fit in the culture of what the company is? Two, is this person basically coachable, and can I basically work with them to improve? Because if you get a fresh graduate or someone who is just learning, or even in a startup, you need people who are very adaptive, very flexible, very quick to learn, and they can handle their own stuff on their own. So I always try to have pointers in an interview with a person to identify these characteristics. The third is, how would they basically, why would they want to join my platform? And this is where I basically have started looking for people who are ambitious, people who want to eventually maybe start their own business. It's a headache to have them, to be honest, because at any point they might feel that the company is not growing as they want it to be. So you always have to maintain a very high standard. And at one point they might see that they're ready to start their own thing. But to me, having these ambitious people who actually want to learn in order to start their own business at one point is 10 times better to me than having people who would not mind being in the same role for 20 years. Because with those ambitious people, they're going to come in, they might leave in a year or two, but the value they're going to add, and because they're so eager to learn in that time, they're going to add so much value to the company. And I can just give them projects for them to take over on their own. I don't need to manage all the time. I don't need to take them and hold their hands every step of the way. And the last thing is that we started recently to find people who are into the concept, who maybe like football or understand football. Because we've seen that those people can be taught and can be trained much quicker. And the second is that once they get the initial training, they're much more likely to start putting their own stamp and making suggestions and doing things on their own. Obviously, you need to evaluate your own company and what it has and what it does. And based on that, you will have a profile of what that person should look. And based on that, you'll start hiring. So my main takeaway is you shouldn't care about their work history. You shouldn't care about if they have work experience. If you meet them and you see certain indicators that tells you that this guy or this lady will do really well at my company, and they're excited to learn and they want to learn and work with me, that's going to be 10 times better than getting someone who might have on a CV 5 years of experience doing something that sounds cool or amazing, but in theory, they will not be able to give you the same enthusiasm and dedication level. The second point that I wanted to talk about, and by the way, if anyone has any questions or any points, do write them in the Q&A section and we will go through them later. So the second thing I wanted to talk about was fundraising. So it could happen at a very early stage or maybe later on. But once you go through your initial investment that you put in to start your business and start scaling it, you'll see that with the startup, you quickly need to start getting money in order to take your business to the next level. Depends on what route you go to. So fundraising isn't always a must. If you want to grow your business by getting more revenue in and growing the business with the revenue, you can do that. It might take longer. In my opinion, it's more sustainable, but it can be difficult, especially in the first 1 to 3 years of your business. So we'll be talking about how to get fundraising and what things to look out for. The first thing is that we need to distinguish between how you can get money in. And in order to do that, there are two types of financing that you can get. The first is debt financing, and the second is equity financing. Debt financing is in 99% of the times basically a loan. It can be interest-free loan, it can be a family loan, it can be a friend's loan, but it's basically something that you have to pay back at one point. Whereas with equity, what happens is that someone will give you the money, and in return, they will have some sort of ownership in your company. And that's basically equity. So each one of them has drawbacks and advantages as well. So it's always important for you to realize and evaluate where you stand in your company and how you need to finance basically. So the advantages of debt financing is that you keep full ownership of your business. You don't have to give anyone a share of your business or a board seat or anything to own in your company. It's completely equity free and you completely own the business as well with your partners. The second is that once you repay whatever debt you got, it's done. Khas. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to, you don't have any responsibilities. You don't have any obligations, and it's done. Interest is that tax deductible, might not apply to where we are here. And then with debt and financing, you have short and long-term options. So depending on what type of financing you need and why, you have both options. You can either get a loan that you can pay within a year, or you can get something that can be paid over 5, 10, 15 years. And in general, debt financing has more control, so you can get more cash and more quickly as well. However, debt financing does have some drawbacks. The first is that you need to pay it back. And that can be in installments, that can be in a one-time fee, but you will need to pay it back at one point. Whereas with equity, you don't need to do that. The second is that it could cause you cash flow issues because you might get 20,000 BD today, but then you will have to pay, for example, for 20 months, 1,000 BD. So once you spend that 20,000 that you had today, it can affect your cash flow in terms of you're going to have to start paying every month part of that loan. And the third is that you'll need some sort of collateral or guarantee for the bank or whoever is giving you the loan to basically allow you to get that cash. They're not going to give it to you for free. What happens if you stop paying them back? So you need some sort of collateral. So in general, I would say debt financing is riskier, in my opinion. So equity financing, like we said, is less risky because someone will give you the cash, but you don't need to pay it back. And whoever is giving you equity financing, and we'll talk about investors and what to look out for, usually has an expectation that there is a chance that this business might fail or something might go wrong at one point. So 1 out of 10 businesses, only 1 out of 10, 9 out of 10 businesses fail eventually. And that's worldwide. So they always understand that there's a huge risk that the business might not work for different reasons. Second is that you don't need to pay any funds back. You have the cash and it's done. You don't need to pay it back unless there is some sort of fraud or some sort of basically legal dispute. Third is that any investor you have or come in will have some sort of network. So if someone invests in you in a company, that tells other people that you have some sort of credibility or credit with that investor for them to believe in your project and in order to invest in your project as well. Investors don't expect immediate ROI. That's not always true, which is why I'm going to go through it later. You need to pick your investors and you need to make sure that whoever is getting in as an investor doesn't have short-term expectations of getting their money back. They're willing to play the long game, especially with startups. Disadvantages is that the investor returns could be more than debt payment. What does that mean? Is that if you get an investment for someone today for 10,000 for 10% of your business, and you sell your business for 10 million, let's say along the line, that investor will get 1 million because they own 10% of your business. Whereas with a loan, you're going to get 10,000, and then with interest and any tax you pay, you might have to pay 12, 13,000 and you're done. The second disadvantage is that the investor will get some ownership. So you're giving a chunk of your company away. And that comes with a certain expectation from the investor as well. The third is that if you happen to have an investor, in a lot of cases, unless they're a silent investor, you might need to consult the investor for important decisions. Or if you have a board of directors, you will have to take their approval in order to go through any major decisions. And that is usually agreed upon. So before you start fundraising, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions, basically. The first is, why do I need to fundraise? And should I fundraise? Obviously, it depends from person to person, but you need to ask yourself that and have a clear answer of why you need it. In a lot of cases, it's because you want to grow your company quicker. You might not want to put a lot of personal cash or friends cash or even take a loan with high risk. And that's when you decide to basically fundraise. The second is, can I achieve my goals without fundraising? So like we said, fundraising is not a must. If you manage to grow your business up to a point where you're making enough revenue and you basically can sustain yourself and grow your company, and you want to grow it over long term, then you're not going to need fundraising in all honesty. But if your goals are to grow it aggressively within a short period of time, this is where you're going to require fundraising. The third is, how much do I need to fundraise? So you should have an idea about how much money do I need, how much money would I require. And usually what they recommend is that you should try to budget your expenses for the next year. And then based on that, you'll know how much money you need in order to take the business to the next level, let's say. Fourth is that, what do I expect to get out of the fundraise? So I've raised money, so what is the expectation? And that is mainly linked to the goals that you want to achieve. So I'm going to get $100,000. I'm going to spend 20% of it on hiring, 40% on marketing, and then 30% for developing the product, for example. How long will the investment last me? And this is also related to how much do I need to fundraise. So you always need to have enough cash in the bank if you're early and you're losing money in the beginning, to last you at least 6 months to a year. And then based on that, you will know exactly how much money you have upfront. 6 is, what investors will I target? So that gives you an indication of who should I target in terms of investors. And I'm going to be talking in a bit about what to look out for investors other than money. And the last is, what will I value my company at? And this is a topic that I might mention in a bit, but it's now time to have Ali, our guest speaker. So Ali is actually working for MEVP, which is a VC that is operating in the GCC. And they do investments, and they've done a lot of investments. So before that, he was also working in the Rawat team in BDV. So he has a lot of experience in terms of that. He might talk to you about that in detail. And if you have any questions in terms of the VC perspective, then you can basically ask him any questions you have. Ali, can you try to talk maybe? Well, Jinan, are you here?
Yeah, hello.
Ali, شخبار?
تمام، شلونك انت؟ How's it going?
Good, good. We're actually in the same office, but he's upstairs.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this course so far. So as Yasser said, my name is Ali Al-Majdoub. I work with Middle East Venture Partners. We're a regional VC firm. I think I was also invited to speak because I'm also part of the Malaeb Hub, which is a local chapter for the Global Shapers community, which we actually partnered with Startup Magazine in order to promote this event. So I think I'll just, they told me I have 5 minutes to talk. So I'll just use these 5 minutes to first, maybe just, if anyone's interested, the Malaeb Hub of the Global Shapers community is the local chapter of the Global Shapers community, which is a global initiative, came about from the World Economic Forum a few years back. And we promote social and economic change. We care about environmental change and sustainability, identify skill gaps and creating better jobs for people. We work on other projects such as social justice, and also education. We work on local things such as مثلا green iftar. So we created a guide on how to have a green iftar. We worked with some of the mosques here in Bahrain to promote green iftars. We also worked with the Bahrain Benefit Company and Bahrain FinTech Bay to do hackathons to use open banking and financial technologies to solve social sustainability goals or to achieve sustainability challenges. We also worked with the Women Power Summit and to promote women in the work field. We did competitions. We did cleaning out the beaches. We did also farming or putting trees and stuff. So it's a really, really cool thing. And we also work with a lot of regional and global chapters of other hubs. So with the Riyadh hub, Khobar hub, Berlin hub, Frankfurt hub, Erbil hub, Cairo hub, and we work with regional projects and for example education and how can we promote professional skills على مستوى الوطن العربي or in the MENA region. We participate in global conferences and events, either organized by the World Economic Forum or by the Global Shapers community. So it's a really great thing, and I'll maybe just put something here in the chat for you guys to check out, some just links. So that's number one. Number two, I maybe just wanted to give a quick brief about venture capital and the fundraising process. I'm really sorry, I don't know the backgrounds of all the attendees here. Well, I think I have 18 individuals here attending. But I want to maybe just give a few pointers for you to keep in mind when you're working on your venture capital, on your fundraising process. And I'm assuming here, so number one, what I wanted to clarify, I'm assuming here that everyone is working on building a technology startup, right? And when it comes to creating business, you might, there's a spectrum of, let's say, your typical business, lifestyle business, which is maybe like your typical small, medium-sized business, which is maybe a hair salon, the typical example that I'm pretty sure Yasser was using. And then the other hand, you have, your fast-growing, Facebooks and Googles and maybe Kareems that are growing very, very rapidly, right? And it really, in my opinion, you would have different spectrums of different companies where, they can be only limited in the scale that they could grow. And if I'm opening up a small grocery store, right, it's the same exact grocery store in every single neighborhood. There's not really much differentiation. You want to make sure that you're offering the same type of products, and the scalability of the model is very, very minimal, but it serves a specific purpose, right? Whenever you're opening up a new neighborhood, you need to have your grocery store, your laundromat, your restaurants, maybe your khabbaz, all of that stuff. But then, on the other hand, you have your Kareems, your Facebooks, your Googles, and these guys are, growing very, very rapidly within a very short period of time, and they need a lot of money because the profits that are gaining from that business is not sufficient to achieve the, very high growth they want to achieve within that short time span. So this is, and what I want to focus is on that side, right? Also before actually even talking about maybe the fundraising process, what I wanted to maybe just communicate here in this session is before even starting a company, right? I would actually maybe advise, I don't know what Yasser has been telling you guys, but I would really advise you guys to work and get some experience before starting your own company. So that's number one. You have your typical story of Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs quitting university in order to start their own business. But this is really a minority of cases. The majority of cases are all individuals that finished high school, graduated from university, then worked at different places, excelled and work in different places. They gained a lot of experience and expertise in the fields that they work in, right? And then after that, they decided to start their own business. Hatta with us at MEVP. So MEVP is a regional VC firm. We have offices for Dubai, Beirut, Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and here in Bahrain. Our companies are all over the region, in Turkey, Pakistan, Singapore, in addition to your Saudi companies and UAE and Lebanon and the Egyptian companies. And the median age for the entrepreneurs is it's not 25, it's not 20, it's more actually 35 or so. So the majority of our entrepreneurs are people that gained a lot of experience and then took that experience to establish their own businesses. And this gives a much better edge in terms of actually fundraising down the line. So that's number one. Number two, right? If you're really even interested in startups, I would highly advise مثلا trying to identify fast-paced, rapid-growing startups where you could actually learn. One of the best schools that actually bring up new entrepreneurs is typically a company that goes public, and whether here in the MENA region or in Silicon Valley, right? In Silicon Valley, you could all go all the way back to I think the 60s or 70s when Fairchild, one of the companies which had something called the Fairchild 9, I believe. So this was a company that actually produced silicon chips, if I'm not mistaken. And out of that, 9 different individuals came out and they started different companies. And I believe maybe HP was one of them. And then after that, you had the PayPal mafia, right? And you have guys like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Reid Hoffman and Dave McClure. All these guys who started, a bunch of other startups after they all learned to start their own businesses at PayPal, right? One of the first fintech companies to service the internet era. And here now, على مستوى الوطن العربي or in the MENA region, you have companies such as Careem that have brought up a very nice regeneration of new entrepreneurs. And I don't know if you actually follow the entrepreneurship scene in the MENA region. There's a lot of new startups that are raising their seed, Series A, Series B rounds, and a lot of them are all ex-Careem. Even actually in our company alone, right, we have maybe a few other, some of my colleagues, they all worked at Careem for some time, and in addition to other startups. And me personally as well, I worked in a couple of startups before joining. But not any startup. Make sure that it's a really rapid, fast-growing startup that has an eye on growth, and people come in from different experiences, and it's a great place to learn. Now, with that caveat, I was listening to Yasser, and I see that he was talking about the fundraising process and identifying the different sources of income or financing. So, and I apologize if I'm repeating a few things. So, number one, the key point that I want to share in terms of fundraising is you want to first off identify the sources of financing available to you, right? On a broad level, you have your debt and then your equity. And then on your equity, you have, friends and family, and then you have maybe angel investors, and then early stage venture capital firms, also, and then later stage venture capital firms. But not only those, but you also have maybe government grants, business plan competitions, and there's a lot of options, right, that you need to first identify.
You just actually ruined my next slide.
Oh, okay.
It's fine. Go ahead, relax. Go ahead.
Okay, so and the fundraising process, it's not, it's not straightforward, right? A lot of companies that I might see, we don't actually maybe invest initially, but maybe we build a relationship over a whole year where we would meet from time to time with the entrepreneur, learn about their updates, and it's through building that relationship where we actually identify whether this company is suitable for us or not, right? So number one, identifying all the different sources of financing, right? And then number two, building your relationships with all these different sources of financing. And then also identifying which ones are more suitable, right? Venture capital for us, especially, at the later stages, you're only looking for a very, very specific type of tech startups, right? On the other hand, if you're doing something related to content, or you're producing, let's say, podcasts, or you're working on something which is related to media, or you want to open up a restaurant, these are, yeah, maybe you might find some VCs that are interested, but typically, venture capitalists don't like restaurants. Content stuff could be very difficult. It's hit and miss, but that does not mean that this could be a really great business. And maybe you could identify angel investors, mentors, other people that can invest in your business. To all of the companies that we have invested in, they all were able to somehow, either, a lot of people come from different backgrounds, and some of them come from more privileged backgrounds, and it's easier for them to get that seed money, and that's a fact of life. But in somehow or another, they're able to build clout, excitement with different people, friends, family, mentors, and angel investors that really want to be part of your story, right? It's also comes down to you and your ability to build, to promote that story and to bring people that, want to help you in achieving that story. And then after that, right, you could actually further grow, and you were able to identify who's the appropriate partners and who should put money into this, right? But if you're going to venture capital is a very specific type of company that we're looking for. And we're not here to serve the whole business market, right? So, and the more sources of financing that we have, whether it's debt or equity, the better for the business. And access to capital remains something a little bit more challenging, if you compare it to more mature markets. So I think that's basically it. I feel like I spoke a lot.
Max, thank you so much, Ali. It's very insightful, and I think you maybe I missed time, so you came in between. So I think it was really complementary to what I was saying and what I'm gonna say next. So if you guys want to ask any questions to Ali, we have a 5-minute Q&A. So if you guys have any question to Ali, either about the global shapers in terms of being interested to join, or any other questions on what they do, or even about VC perspective on investment and how to look for investors, do write them in chat, and I can basically tell them to Ali and he can answer them. So I think Mariam Yasser is saying that she'd like to join the Shapers. So Ali has put the website of both Global Shapers and the Manama Hub. If anyone wants to look into them, you can basically get to know about what they do, and as well as get to basically join. Ali Dima is asking, what type of companies do VCs invest in?
So every venture capitalist firm has maybe a different investment thesis. So you want to make sure that you understand the venture capital landscape and who are the VCs available and which ones are suitable. But starting with us at Middle East Venture Capital, so we have our latest fund that is active that we're deploying from, which is MEVF3. And that is more of a later stage fund. So we're looking at companies raising their Series A, Series B. They already introduced their product. They're already making money. They're approaching $1 million in annual revenue as a run rate, at least. And they need maybe relatively larger ticket sizes, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. I know sometimes when you talk to startups that are at the idea stage, this seems like, halas, this is not a startup anymore, but they're still. But in actuality, these guys are still building their products. They're still tweaking their value propositions. They still haven't really accessed the MENA market properly, and they need a lot of money to expand. So this is MEVP. In addition, we're sector agnostic, but we typically like, asset light companies that there's not a lot of execution risk around it. There's not a lot of operations and not a lot of, risks of revolving around maybe manufacturing or logistics or operations. And typically MEVP likes things that are more asset light, more technology based, and comes up with a business model that we believe to be more scalable. Now then you have your venture capital firms that might focus on early stage companies, and those typically would always take a look at you, the entrepreneur, right? And what's your background, and why should I believe in you and your business? So even as us as an EVP, we invest at later stage investments, but let's say a relatively early stage company comes in with a serial entrepreneur, someone who maybe we worked out from before, or someone that we really know that has a great, that worked in another company, that is of high growth, rapidly growing, execution focused. I'm pretty sure you've all, noticed when it comes to the Arab world, most of the, hot and big startups, they're not novel in their business models or that unique. And you'll always find something similar from maybe the American market as an example. And I'm pretty sure maybe Yasser also mentioned that. But what makes it difficult here in the MENA region is execution, right? And the MENA region, it's not like the States or India where, it's one big market. You get a license once and then you have access to hundreds of millions of potential customers, and it's very easy to mobilize and to sell and to outreach, and everyone speaks one language, and the purchasing power is very similar. If you take a look at the Arab world, right, the GCC is very different, right? UAE, Dubai, expat focused, and a lot of high turnover in terms of people coming in, coming out. Saudi, you need to have a much deeper level of localization. The GCC as a whole has much more higher purchasing power than, let's say, Egypt. Egypt, the consumer there is very tough to deal with, right? Retention costs is very high. Financial inclusion and infrastructure in Egypt is much more difficult and different than the GCC. You know what I mean? So, and then you have the different regulators. Even in the UAE, as an example, and you have maybe 5 or 6 different regulators. Whether you start your business in an offshore or free zone site versus onshore site, or ADGM versus DIFC, and then each one has a lot of pros and cons. Do you need a lot of banking relationships? Do you need to work with local companies or not? Is it to B2B, B2C? So execution is the key challenge when it comes to entrepreneurs. So we want people that typically have some experience in running companies and executing, at least, maybe worked in other places where they were able to learn and get that skill. People that are willing to do anything, as an entrepreneur. You're doing the accounting and financing in the one day, the second day you're helping out the product team and finalizing your product and maybe launching a new version of your software. The third day you're working with legal, so it's not like you have the luxury of, oh, I'm only going to do, especially if you're the lead founder and the lead entrepreneur, right? At that stage, you got to do everything. And maybe you enjoy one aspect, right? But all the other, the legal stuff or the financial stuff or maybe the sales stuff, you hate it, but you got to do it. And as long as you show the venture capitalist or the investor that you're able to do what it takes, to get things done, that's what gets people excited the most, right? You have great ideas, you come to me, you have great ideas, I get super excited. And then let's say we sit for a whole year, and then every time we reconnect after 3-4 months, we ask, what have you done so far? And if it's nothing has changed, that is a huge turn off for the investor. So you want to show the investor that you're always getting things done. Maybe you would have to pivot a couple of times, but you gotta. You gotta, give me comfort that you're able to execute. So at the early stage, this is what you want to show. And then things like valuation, and these come later. Once, if I'm super excited for this deal, we'll make a deal happen, right? And if you really care about this company, I'm super excited, we'll make a deal happen. So you don't worry about the valuation. And sure, you could talk to other people and seek advice about what's a fair valuation and whatnot. And this is way after.
Thank you so much, Ali. I think it really adds a lot of, let's say, actual sense in terms of we are talking about the theoretical part and then you're coming in with the practical. So I'm sure you've you've covered with a lot of what we said and what's going to come next.
Yeah, so I apologize if I was if all of it was repetitive. You guys are in good hands.
No, بالعكس of that.
I would just ask maybe you or Jinan as well. They could always leave my email. I'll just put it here, so anyone, you could just copy my email, and then you could reach out to me later. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time, Ali. Have a great evening.
My pleasure.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys. So I think that was really useful in terms of getting a real-time example or how things actually work in real life. So some things Ali mentioned we were already talking about, and some things will come in a few slides per se. So the next thing you need to look out for in terms of fundraising, and once I finish fundraising part, we'll have a short break and then come back, is what to look out for fundraising. Because whenever you're getting people as investors coming into your company, you're giving a part of your company away. And in a lot of cases, that shareholder or that investor will hold some sort of power over you as founder. And there's a very famous story about Apple and Steve Jobs. Like once he built the company in the first time, he actually got fired by his board of directors at one point. And then after a few years, they had to rehire him back. And at that point, he had it as a condition to hold more power. So you need to look out for a lot of things, because eventually it's your company, you're building it, and you should decide where it should head. But it's also a downside where if you're bringing someone to come in and they're parting away with some of their money to put in, they will have to have some sort of assurance or some sort of protection to make sure that whatever money they give you makes sense. So the first question you need to ask is, why does the investor want to invest in me? If you are approached or if you approach someone. So that's important for you in terms of understanding why does that investor find your company attractive? What can they add? What can they help? What do they see in you as a founder? In a lot of cases, they'll be investing in you, not the company or the idea per se, because they believe in your capability of growing this company further. The second is, what is the investor looking to get out of the investment? So in a lot of time, you will find investors who have the cash to put in, but you shouldn't accept any cash. You should know that, one, that the investor should understand your business, should understand how it's growing. In a lot of cases, if you're a tech startup, investors should not expect some sort of dividend or some sort of repayment of their investment within 1-2 years. Investors who put money into tech startups know that they're betting on the startup growing their valuation and maybe exiting 5 or 10 years along the line. And they're willing to wait. They're not going to pressure you. They're not going to ask you, when can I get my money back? When can I get my return? And it's also important to know what the investor is looking to get out of the investment. Does the investor share my vision of where the company should head? So in the early days, you need to tell the investor, have these conversations with the investors in terms of, how do I see my company growing, and where is it going, and where should it head, and what are the potential outcomes that I want to get out of it? Obviously, that can change, and that will change at certain points. But eventually, that takes me to the next level, is that the investor should have trust in you and your capability to grow your business. So if you decide to pivot or change your business model 1 year along the line, because either you don't see your old model working out as well as it should, or because you want to take the company in another direction, that investor should have faith and should have some sort of trust in your capability to make these right decisions. You will disagree, you will have disagreements, you will have arguments, you might have different points of view, but eventually if they really believe in you as a founder, you're going to find a way to take it to the next level. And last is, what type of value can the investor bring beyond money? So in a lot of cases, you need to understand who the investor is and what can they bring in other than money. So if you're planning to expand into Saudi, for example, do they have enough connections to help you grow in Saudi? And if you want to focus on Saudi, it wouldn't make sense to get an investor who might have some connections in Kuwait, for example, and you don't want to target the Kuwaiti market. Can the investor bring some sort of relationships with certain government entities, with other investors who will put in money? Can the investor, for example, do they have a technical background and they can contribute and help you building your product or building your business model or building your marketing side of things? So don't always look at the money only, look at what other value can the investor bring along with the money as well. A point that Ali mentioned was who are investors that can invest in me? And there are different types. So you have friends and family who can put in smaller amounts or can collectively put in money that you can invest in. Then you have angel investors. They are usually people with wealth and they're looking to invest in certain projects or certain startups. Then you have VCs. So Ali's example, VCs are more of a pool of investors coming in to start a fund. And then that fund will be managed by certain people who will invest in certain startups. So it's more institutional, let's say. You have some corporations who might look into investing, especially if you are operating in their field of interest. So if you're operating in, let's say, an app that caters for restaurants, for example, one of your potential investors could be Al Ghali Group, who own a couple of restaurants and see strategic value in investing in you. Or could be other entities who are related in that sector. And that's as you have angel groups. So angel groups basically group a number of angel investors into one fund, and then they manage that fund on their behalf. So I've put in 5 examples of companies or institutions in Bahrain who do investment at very early stages, especially at idea and pre-seed plus seed stage. So you have Tenmu, they're the Bahrain business angels. You have Flat 6 Labs, Bahrain. So they have different batches and they've had 6 batches, I believe, so far. And in each batch, they evaluate companies and then they take them into a program where they coach the founders, give them advice, mentorship sessions, evaluate their business models and expand the business. You have 500 startups who are more into the whole MENA region. So they don't just invest in Bahrain, but they are based in Bahrain, which is a plus for us. You have Rawad, who are under Bahrain Development Bank, BDB, and they do some investments as well. And lastly, you have Brink, who mainly do some investments to do with hardware and software companies. So before we go into a break, so does anyone have any questions so far in terms of what we talked about today? In terms of team building, in terms of partners, in terms of investing, in terms of fundraising, in terms of anything that we've talked about so far? Okay, so I'll wait 1 more minute, and if we don't have any questions, then we're gonna go to a break. So Dima is asking how much equity to give your developer if he's part-time. Ideally, should only give equity to full-time employees who will be fully dedicated to your company. If someone is coming in for 2, 3, 4, 5 months and then leaving, do not give them equity. The reason you're giving them equity is because you want them to be a part of your company long-term, and you want them to be part of that process of growing your company and being part of it. You can have a part-time developer, and at one point you might like their work and like their dedication, and you might want to offer them a full-time role to join. At that point, you should offer them equity. But in general, you should not give equity to any part-time people or advisors or mentors who are basically doing it on the side. Only give equity to people who will grow the company with you as well. So Fida is asking for angel investors. Is there a way to find them easily, or is it all about the connections you make? So in terms of Bahrain, I don't believe we have any databases of angel investors. You can always ask around. You can always reach out to the Startup Bahrain team, and they do have a pool of angel investors who are looking to basically invest. But it does count a lot on the connections you make. So if you might know someone, or and you can always also reach out to these people and just tell them that, hey, by the way, would you be interested in investing in a project, knowing that they have money or they have certain expertise that you would want in the team. In terms of the GCC and the Middle East, there are a couple of platforms. One is called Jawla, I believe. So Jawla is in Saudi, and they do have a database of angel investors in Bahrain. You can always also ask about, ask other startups, ask friends about certain angel investors who do invest in projects. Like Ali mentioned, you need to also understand what type of businesses does this angel usually invest in. If you want someone who's into the food industry or a salon industry, then you need to find someone who basically understands that industry, or someone who has built a good connection in that industry and can then be more into investing. So yes, I think you do need connections, but you can also ask around. You can approach people directly. If you think that someone might be a good fit, you can always talk to them and see if they're willing to invest. And worst thing that's going to happen is that you're going to get some feedback from them on your company and how to grow it. Salma is asking, where can I get to meet skillful potential partners or team members? So you can definitely always attend events revolved around startups and ecosystem. So it depends on what type of business you own. If you're into tech, then always be around startup events, always be around events that these people who would fit in your company be around. For startups and technology, I would definitely recommend you to actually join one of the startup weekends. So startup weekends is a 3-day event where over 50 people come together. Some of them have tech backgrounds, some of them have business backgrounds, and you literally build a company in 3 days. And then you have a weekend to finish all of it and launch at least an MVP. So that gives you a good indication on people who work really well with, and you might be in a team. So you don't go with a team, you go as an individual, and then they match you with different individuals as a team. So by working with them through that weekend, you can definitely find a lot of skilled potential partners. Otherwise, you can definitely talk to people. You can ask around and start having that conversation with them. And like I mentioned earlier, start by working on a limited capacity, let's say, give them a couple of tasks, see how they work, how the dynamic is like, and at that point, try to convert them into a partner. So Dima is asking how to know when to value your company at, or how much to value your company at. So when to value is usually once you start fundraising, that's when you should start looking, okay, so how much? How much really, there is no one formula on how to value your company. Usually it depends on a lot of factors, but you always need to see what the market is at right now. So in Bahrain, if you ask around, you'll know that, for example, Flat 6 Labs does a pre-seed fund, and they give 12,000 dinars for 10%, which values really idea stage companies at 120,000 dinars at idea, even at the beginning. So if you have some sort of traction, or if you manage to get into one of their programs, that will give you your valuation, and then you can grow based on that. But you need to have some sort of baseline on how the investment ecosystem is looking in the region. So if we're talking about seed companies in Bahrain or pre-seed, usually you won't find a company valued at $1 million+. But if you go to the US and Silicon Valley, you'll find seed companies valued at 10 or even $20 million. And that's at a very idea stage. And in this region, we're not at that stage yet. So you need to ask around and do your research around what the valuations are based on. And then it's a negotiation between you and the investor. So you might basically propose some valuation, but the investor might not agree with. And it's then a negotiation until you reach a point where you both agree on a certain valuation. Okay, so we'll have a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for the next section. So we'll come back at 8:15 exactly. Okay, so I might have promised you guys that the last 1 hour will be for basically the more interactive session, but we're running a bit behind schedule. So I'll try to finish the last part within the next 15 minutes so that we can then spend the last half an hour on actually listening to you guys and what you guys want to share. The next thing I wanted to talk about was how to grow your customer base. So how do you acquire more customers? How do you get more customers in? And how do you basically get to a point where you have a lot more customers using your product or in your company, basically. So Dave McClure has what's called a funnel, or what he calls a pirate metrics for startup growth. So any customer coming into your company will go through usually 5 different stages. The first is acquisition, and we'll go through each one to explain what it is. So how do customers find you, and how do you get customers to hear about you? The second is about activation. So how quickly can you get your customers to the aha moment? And we'll explain what the aha moment is. The third is retention. So how many of your customers are being retained? Keep using your platform or keep buying from you more than one time. Fourth is referral. So how can you turn your customers into advocates? So people who would tell people to try your food or to basically use your platform or to check it out. Last is revenue. So how do you get the revenue in and how do you increase it? So first thing is acquisition. So how do you get people to either hear about your platform or also to come in and try your product or company? First thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself, who is my customer? Once you start creating a persona around who your customer is, so if you're a beauty salon, your customer would obviously be females, and you can target them based on the type of services you need to a certain age group. Or if you want to price it differently to a certain, let's say, dimension of the society and people who would like to pay more or less, depending on how you price things. So it's very important for you as a startup, as a company, to identify who your customer is. What do they look like? What are their demographics? How old are they? Where do they usually interact? What type of social media companies they use? And what do they like in general? Once you do that, you can then start, there are 17 different methods in order to try to target your customer bases. And these 17 usually differ from company to company. They differ from sector to sector, and they also differ from target audience to target audience. So depending on what your company is, you might want to experiment with each and every one, and then see which one gets you better results and which one is better for your own business. So there is no one rule, or there are no channels that are suitable to all different types. Each and every business is different, and each and every target audience is different. So I'll go through them quickly. Organic is basically users that you acquire without actually taking effort. So someone might find you in the App Store, someone might be walking and sees your restaurant, someone might be passing by and want to try something, and you don't need to basically do any effort. They're just going to find you on their own and try the business. Second is word of mouth, and this is something that's really good in Bahrain, and people talk a lot, and we can get word of mouth going very quickly. So I find an app, I find a restaurant, and then I tell my friends, my family about it. Third is organic social media. So you can send WhatsApp broadcasts, you can talk on WhatsApp groups, you can post on Twitter, you can post on Instagram without actually sponsoring or paying. And then whoever is following you or is retweeting or reposting will get the word out for you on a bigger scale. Fourth is paid social media ads. So you actually pay to be posted in Instagram or in Snapchat as an ad. And this gives you more exposure for people who are interacting with that channel. Fifth, you have physical marketing. So anything printed, anything like street banners, brochures, leaflets, that's a marketing channel as well. Email marketing as well. So sending emails to your customers or a big database. SMS marketing, something else that you can use. Search engine marketing is basically advertising on either Google or Yahoo for your result or your keywords to pop up at top. Search engine optimization is more of engineering. So once you build a website, you need to rank it in Google, and there are different tricks that you can do in order to do that. Usually you might want someone who's into either marketing or development to do that for you. Speaking engagement, so what I'm doing now, so I'm speaking at an event or at a workshop, and there is an audience hearing about who I am, what my product is, and that might drive some people to either use it or tell others about it. Then you have events and conventions, so you can have a booth at an event to market your product. Referrals is usually done on the app, so someone uses the app and then you try to incentivize them to refer someone to actually use your app. Partnerships, so you can partner up with a company, with an entity, with a newspaper in order for them to post about you. Then you have affiliate programs where you can work with, for example, university students or certain individuals to promote your product. You have PR, so you can do a campaign, you can do a charity campaign, and that will get people talking and hearing about your product and what you care about, basically. You have then media, so TV, radio, newspaper could be paid, could be free. So you do a TV interview and then people are watching and they can then know about your business. And last is you have social media influencers, so people with a big amount of users that you can pay in order to promote or talk about your product. So out of these 17s, I have highlighted at least 10 of them that are completely free of charge. So you're not going to have to spend anything in order to basically market your product. And I always recommend people, and I always tell people, is that start with these first, find ways to acquire users without actually spending money, and experiment with these, because if you find your ideal channel and you don't even need to pay anything to get users to come in, you're set. You don't have to worry about allocating a huge marketing budget. So it's important for you to go through your free channels first, and go to them one by one by doing small experiments, by setting small budgets if you need, and then going through them one by one and getting results out of each one on how many users did it get me, how many sales did it get me, and that will give you an indication on which channels work best for you. So 3 fundamental questions you want to be asking yourself about acquisition. So what channel is driving most traffic? What channel is driving the most valuable traffic? So not just people downloading your app, actually making an action in your app. So valuable traffic, so someone downloading and then doing an action. And then what channel has the lowest customer acquisition cost? So which is the cheapest? And based on that, you will know which channels are best for you. Second is activation. So once you get people to come to your restaurant, to come to your salon, to download your app, to come to your website, you need them to take some sort of action, which your product is based on. So activation is about the first experience. Once they start using your product, it's very important for you to activate them from the first use, because a lot of them will drop off if they don't see value or if they're not able to take a certain action. So it's not enough to get people to download your app or even sign up if they are going to stop using it after. That's why it's crucial to get them to get them to the aha moment. So the aha moment is when the user realizes that, hey, I came to this app, I came to this website, and this is the value that it's giving me. And this is where they will see the value, they will interact, and they will probably keep using the app and realizing that they love your platform. So I have 3 examples of aha moments from 3 of the biggest companies out there. So Facebook basically found out that their aha moment comes when a user adds or acquires 7 friends within the first 10 days. If they do that, then they're more likely to keep using their platform for even years. But if they fail to allow the user to acquire or add 7 friends who are accepted in 10 days, that user is more likely to stop using Facebook after the 10 days. For Twitter, they have realized that once that person follows 30 people in order for them to see their tweets, that's when the aha moment is. Because if you don't follow people, you're not going to have anything in your feed and you're not going to interact with Twitter. But if you have at least 30 who are posting or tweeting, that's when you're more likely to come back. For Dropbox, they saw that users should upload at least 1 file in order for them to keep using it. So if they download Dropbox and they don't upload any files, they're much more likely to drop off after a while. And it's going to take you a while to find your aha moment, but it's also important for you to know what it is and what action is it that you want to make the user do in order for them to like your product. Third is retention. So once you activate them, ideally you don't want the users to use your platform once and that's it. You want to retain them. And according to Harvard Business Reviews, it's 5 to 10, 25 more times expensive to spend on acquiring new users than retaining them. So if you have a user and you have reactivated them at least once to use your product, you don't need to do a lot because they've seen the value, and if their experience was good, they're going to keep using the product, or they'll be more likely to keep using the product. So retention is actually, in my opinion, more important than acquisition, because if you keep acquiring users who will not come back and not use your product more, then you'll be in an endless loop where you have to keep spending, or you keep doing effort to acquire more users who you will eventually lose. So you need to make sure that people are retained and they keep using the app or the website. So how do I retain my users? So focus on your first-time experience. Try to build your experience in order to get them to the aha moment as quickly as possible and in the best way possible. Second is learn how to retarget and engage your audience. So I use the app to book once. Then I'm going to send them a notification 2 days later to remind them to book again, for example. Or I'm going to send them an email to keep booking. Or I'll send them some promotional material to re-engage them to keep using the app. Offer rewards and discounts. So if I buy from you one time, I'll tell you, hey, come back again and buy from me second time, and you'll get a 10% discount on your second order. So because they have some sort of incentive to book again or to buy your product again, they're more likely to use that discount and not lose it. And you need to distinguish how many times do you need a user to make the first 2 to 3 purchases in order for them to stay with you for a year, for example. And based on that, you can provide your discounts. Deliver fresh content. So you need to keep adapting. You need to keep improving your product. Don't keep it the same, because eventually people will get bored and won't come back, because they will want to see new content. They will want to see improvements. They will want to see new features, better services. So deliver fresh content. Be around your users. So if you're targeting users, you always have to remind them subconsciously that you're around, and by being in the areas that your target audiences are around. And second is provide the best customer support you can possibly provide. So mistakes will happen. Some experiences will go bad, but as long as you contain them in a very quick manner, that can work in your favor to actually make them come back again. Fourth is referral. So referral is the action of someone actually talking to their friend, not word of mouth, but you incentivizing someone to basically talk to 2 people. And then these 2 people will talk to 3 people. And then these 3 people will talk to 3 other people. And then you'll have a referral basically of 1 person eventually getting you to 100. So how can you do referrals? So you need to know when to ask for the referral. So it's usually after you have given the user the aha moment and they like the experience and they've been through a good experience. That's when you want them to basically refer, because it's going to be positive. Second is provide the right incentive. If you want to offer someone a 10% or a 50% discount if they bring their friend, then that's good. If you have a leaderboard and you want to give them some sort of points or awards, then you can also do that in order for them to refer. Make it as easy as possible. Don't make it very complicated. So don't let them invite 5 people, and if 5 people all make orders, then I'll get my reward. It's going to be too complicated and long. And then find ways to help your customers overcome reputational risk. If I'm talking to someone and telling them, hey, visit this restaurant, download this app, I'm putting my reputation on the line because I'm telling them about it from my side. If they have a bad experience, they will think less of my opinion. So try not to put your customer at that risk. So last is revenue. Once you've figured out all of these earlier steps and you have mastered each one of the 4 steps, this is where you can then make revenue at a much better scale, because you've basically how to increase revenue is by, it's a simple formula. You increase your customer lifetime value. So they keep using the app for a long time, not just once, and they drop off. And then you do that using the least or the cheapest methods available. Once you have both of these in place by implementing the 4 previous steps, that's when you can start increasing your revenue significantly. Before we move into the part where you guys can interact, I wanted to have kind of like a 5 to 10 minute unscripted, on slide, and not on slides talk, where I want to talk to you guys about my personal experience with entrepreneurship, my personal experience with starting a startup, and some of the things that you should be aware about. To start off, I'll be telling you a lot of things that might scare you off about doing that. But eventually, to be honest, starting my own business and doing that startup, to be honest, was the best decision that I've taken in my life, in all honesty. It's changed so much in my life. It's changed me so much personally as well. I've seen myself develop so much further, and I literally have no regrets. Having said that, you might have thought during the past 2 days, or when you talk to people or you hear other entrepreneurs online, that it's all very rosy and easy, and I'm my own boss and I can set my own rules, which means that I'm living this amazing life. But in reality, it's really, really not. Once you start getting into it, you have to be very, very prepared, because when you're thinking about some idea or doing your own thing, you might think that, yeah, it's better than sitting in an office and doing a job or working for someone else or studying. But once you start working on your own project, the amount of, it's a roller coaster, to be honest. So it's very, very hard. It's very, very different in reality. Nothing will go according to the plan that you've set. You'll start finding a lot of things that you didn't even think about facing or having. You'll face a lot of pressure, to be honest, because once you've taken that step and once you've gone through starting your own business, ideally you would want it to succeed. And I said it yesterday, there is absolutely nothing wrong with failure. So don't let failure be a fear for you to not do that step, or because it's tough, I might fail, which is wrong. Nothing wrong at all with failure. But you need to do your best, and you need to give it your best in order for it to succeed. The thing about being your own boss or having your own company is that you're literally living with your own company literally 24/7. So you can't switch it off. With work, خلاص, once you're done at 4 or at 5, you can literally just switch it off from your head in most cases, and then you can go home and just forget about it until the next day. But with your company, it's your own thing. So you're literally thinking about it all the time. You're literally engaged around it the whole time, which makes it very hard, because you could be sitting at 9 or 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. at night, and you remember that you didn't do this thing, or you remember that, hey, I forgot to do something, or I need to call this person, even though it's 10 or 11 or 12 at night. And you might face situations where you will need to work until 2, 3, 4 a.m. because your business needs you to do that. If you don't do it yourself, it's not going to happen. So you have to be very well prepared mentally. Obviously, preparing yourself might not work, but do be prepared. You will have times where you have mental breakdowns, where you just say that I can't do this anymore, to be honest. I'm too tired. I haven't taken a holiday for a year, 2 years, 3 years, a couple of months, whatever it is. And I'm having to work on weekends, at night, and mornings. So I told you guys, in the first year and a half, I was literally a one-man customer support. And I used to work, even during weekends, Fridays, Saturdays, I'm always switched on. I'm doing a shift either morning or even at night. Sometimes I'm with my friends and I have my phone with me and I'm keeping an eye on it, literally, at all times. And I'm having to look out for any issues that might come. And if something happens, then I leave my friends or my family. I solve the issue and then go back. I can't afford not to. It's my business. It has to succeed, and I'm trying my best. Eventually, the more you do this, the more you're going to reach a stage where you do burnout. And that can be really tough, because you can't switch off at points, especially very early on. You can't allocate the job to someone else. You don't have employees. it's up to you, which makes it extremely, extremely hard, to be honest. I'm not trying to scare you guys in terms of not doing it. It's just that someone has to tell you guys about the bad times that do happen, because you need to be prepared. Financially is another thing. And in the beginning, you might not be able even to afford to pay yourself a salary. It might be very minimal. It might be 200 BD. It might be 400 BD. So even though I had my own savings, after a whole year and a half of getting peanuts, basically in the beginning 200 BD and then 400 BD, and we didn't have funding at that point, I reached a point where I did max out my credit cards. I ran out of all my savings. And I mentioned it yesterday, I didn't want to go to my family, even though they were going to be supportive, and alhamdulillah, and they're in a good state, and they were not going to tell me no, or they will help me with whatever I have. But it was a point to me that I wanted to prove to myself that I want to do. And that, to be honest, put me in a lot of pressure, and my family were really supportive at all times. And I just didn't want to share that pressure with them, maybe at that point, because I wanted to do it by myself. And that's just how I am personally. In terms of your company as well will go through really hard times. So at one point, we closed an investment round, and then there were some legal processes that were going to take a couple of months in order for us to actually get the money in. And we were really on the brink. خلاص, we were running out of money. So 1 month, we barely scrapped around paying our employees' salaries. And I'm not lying, this is actually true. I opened our bank account at the end of the month, and it had 400 fills in it. I talked to Ahmed and I told him, we can't even buy ourselves a proper dinner with that. So how are we going to pay our salaries for the next month? And that gives you a lot of pressure, because you have employees who are counting on you. You have your own well-being that you're having to take care of. So you need to be very prepared for these tough situations. Having said all of that, I honestly don't have any regrets. If anything, like I said, it's the best thing that I've ever been through. And I really, really have, I'm so grateful for the experiences I've been through, the people I've met, the investors, my family's support. So you just need to be worry that and aware that it's not as easy as it sounds, but the reward, once you get it and once you keep doing it, is 100 times better than maybe working or مثلا not doing your own thing. Having said that, it's not for everyone. So if you do realize at one point that it's not for you and you don't want to take that pressure and that life doesn't suit you, nothing wrong at all with either مثلا working full time, but in a lot of cases, it might be the best thing for you. So you need to also define that. So now the last section, I do want to hear from you guys. So I think Janan allowed you guys to unmute your mics. So I want you guys to basically share your own experiences, stories, challenges, introduce who you are, what you're doing, things you're related to, things you didn't relate to. So does anyone want to start maybe? Dinan, did you unmute people? Wala?
Hello.
Yeah.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
أنا مريم وحاليا قاعدة أسوي platform website actually it's been over a year in development. الوضع حاليا شوية صعب لأن أنا كنت قاعدة أسوي كل شيء بروحي واضطريت أتعلم وايد أشياء من ناحية الويب بيلدينج. أنا كان عندي بس ايديا، اضطريت أتعلم ويب بيلدينج وأتعلم البزنس بارت اوف ات. فالحمد لله صار لي سنة كاملة، والحين إن شاء الله شهر وأبدي الماركتينج. I'm going to go live إن شاء الله in 1 month. بس لحين everything is very uncertain. يعني أنا ما أعرف شلون يعني كم عدد الناس اللي بيجون، بس I'm putting it out there.
That's great to hear, Mariam. صراحة يعني everyone has been maybe through this. يعني حتى احنا when we started we did go through the same because we didn't know a lot about building an app or a website. And we had to go through يمكن 2 to 3 developers, and we had developers اللي عطلونا يمكن 3 months and they didn't submit the project. Then we got another developer and then he disappeared 1 week before submitting the project. And I've honestly talked to a lot of people, and literally anyone you talk to who has started a website or a project has been through that, to be honest. I don't feel you're alone in this. This is part of the learning process. I'm sure you've learned a lot as well during that time. It's a very exciting time to be in, since you're going to be launching within 1 month. And if you also want to share what the concept is and hear about what other people think, you can also do that here. If not, then you can also maybe hear from others who might have been through the same experience.
Yes, I can share my idea. It's fine. يعني first of all أنا أصلاً اضطريت إني أمحي الموقع 3 مرات until I got it right. It was a roller coaster والله.
I'm sure it was يعني like I said we've been through that and I completely understand where you're coming from لأن وايد مزعج شيء when you finally think إنه خلاص it's ready and you want to launch it and then you have to start all over again. ساعات you say خلاص I quit يعني I don't want to do it.
I had to erase like 3 or 4 months of work.
That sucks.
Yes. لأن sometimes because I don't know where I went wrong, I had to do it all over again. Sometimes I realized إن الsoftware اللي أنا استخدمته is wrong for all the purposes. I had to redo that. يعني it was يعني it's been a very, very hard roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster, to be honest. And حتى once you launch, you're not done yet. توني حذرتكم and I told you it is going to be a roller coaster. But if you really believe in what you want to do and يعني how things will go, you'll actually on certain days. I'm not going to say every day, but on certain days you're actually going to enjoy that roller coaster because you know how much effort and how much you've been through in order to get through that point. So Mariam, Selma is asking, and I'm curious as well. So what are you working on exactly? Yani what's the concept? If you don't want to share it, it's completely fine. But it's always good to share it, and maybe you'll also get a couple of users who will use your website from the session.
Okay. I can share the Instagram because the website still needs a little bit of tweaking.
Okay.
بس mostly أنا I got the idea لأن في ناس وايد قاعدين يسوون online stores. بس في نظري إن it's not really beneficial لأن في النهاية it's only a store. بس إذا سويت brand تقدر إنك تبيعها في أكثر من store. This is the idea.
Nice.
It's a website يعني ناس يسجلون عادي وبس إنه يكون براند فهو يكون عنده مثل ميني كومباني already موجود users customers بيكون عنده الايميلز مالت اليوزرز او الكاستمرز بيكون عنده الكاستمرز يقدرون يسوون tickets submit tickets support يقدر ان يطرشون support tickets follow-ups، يسوون rating reviews. وحتى الحين أنا سويت موضوع إنه يصير digital products. يعني إذا الشخص يسوي لعبة أونلاين، مسوي لعبة، ممكن إنه هو يحطه، هو عنده ستور حق أونلاين جيمز، هو he developed it، بدل ما يروح يسوي يعني through the channels الموجودة حاليا. فهذه يسهل عليه الموضوع، ويكون في invoices وفي support وفي يعني he is his own company، ويقدر إنه هو يسوي staff، يوظف staff كل واحد responsibilities خاصة فيه.
Nice.
Yes, it's a company with multiple companies in it.
I like that. Try to apply some of the concepts that we talked about in terms of lean implementation. So taking it step by step, getting data, learning, changing, and then developing the next step. That will help you a lot in taking it step by step and then developing further. So Mariam has actually posted her the Instagram of her business. You guys can all check it out. I'll check it out later, Mariam, and then I'll take your email from Janan and maybe send you a couple of notes that I might have. But thank you, Saratan, for sharing, and I feel what you're the suffering that you've been through. We've all been through it. You're not alone in this. Just keep at it, and eventually it's a story you're going to tell one day about all the problems that you've been through, and you managed to find a way to basically overcome them.
Inshallah.
Then, does anyone else want to maybe come in and share? If you're not comfortable with talking with Mike, you can write on chat or Q&A, and then we can talk about it on chat.
Hi guys. It's Fida with you. Tawfiq. Yasser, أكيد تعرفني already.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good.
MashaAllah, very nice session. It's my first time joining something like that for Startup Magazine. It was very informative and very engaging. And I would like to share my story. It's not related to technology. And I'm into F&B, food and beverage. I started basically 2 years ago, 15th August 2018. And I was young, and I'm still young. I was 22 years old.
You're still young, come on.
You're still young, بالضبط. إنزين. Let me tell you my story before I start. And as soon as I graduated from uni, I came back to Bahrain. I was studying in Dubai. I came back to Bahrain, وأول شغلة اشتغلتها was a business teacher. So I was actually teaching business management, IGCC students, IB students في مدرسة كونو. And after nearly a year, I decided to quit teaching and get into another field, which is marketing, events and marketing, في الأسرة supermarkets, which is BMMI.
Yes.
And then again, after a year, I decided to quit الأسرة again. That's because I started this business, اللي هو Mommy Pod. I'm not sure if you guys heard about it. It's a Japanese-inspired food kiosk.
Amazing edamame, basically.
Yeah, basically sell edamame in different flavors and Japanese ice cream in the mochi. And if you ask me, was my passion like food or هل كنت أحب like the Japanese cuisine? No, not really. I used to enjoy edamame when I go to Malaeb, when I go to New Asia, when I go to these places. But the question I had was, why is it only with salt?
Yeah.
السؤال اللي كان في مخي ليش بس ملح? I mean, you could do it with other flavors. It's a very nice snack, and once you eat it, you can't stop. It's very addictive. I started reading about the nutrition benefits ماله, and I was surprised. I was quite amazed. Like this product, ما حد يعرف عنه barely. It has a lot of nutrition benefits, and it's a superfood. Why isn't it out there? This is when I started experimenting with different flavors, and I actually have a partner as well. بدينا من البداية. When I shared my idea, he was interested, and that partner is now my husband as well.
Oh, mashallah.
بدينا تقريبا من البداية. We started together, like experimenting with different flavors, etc. So بعدين when I was in Al Isra, this thing already started. We actually opened up in Star Mall a kiosk, and so I was juggling between a full-time job and a business. فشوي كان الوضع كلش صعب. يعني at a point I was there like in my office I was there working, and then I get a phone call that, for example, our freezer display broke down, or the employee wasn't even there. The mall calls me like وين اللي يشتغل عندكم هو حتى مو موجود في المحل كمان. You know, and it was quite difficult. I couldn't focus on my like full-time job. فحسيت إنه okay, I'm not focusing there, وأحس حرام إن هاي الشركة وظفتني and I'm not giving my best there because I'm not focused, you know.
Yeah.
So I decided okay, let me take the step إنه أنا بطلع من هاي الشغلة. وهما they tried to like tell me in the last year كذي. I was like, you know what? Let me try part-time with you guys. And they're like, yeah, sure. But again, I started part-time with them on a part-time basis. تقريباً كنت أروح 3 مرات في الأسبوع. And again, it did not work out properly. It was difficult bad. Yeah. فبعدين I decided خلاص, like I'll just dedicate myself fully like with the business. And actually, يعني, then we started like with a very small kiosk in Sarmul. It was literally 2 meters. It's a very tiny place situated exactly in front of the supermarket Carrefour. يعني, the location was amazing. It was perfect because we were able to catch like people while passing by. Later on we realized, okay, now people are getting to know edamame, but I was so surprised in ترى like 90% did not even know what this thing is. يعني, it was quite challenging to explain to people إن شنو هاي. يقول لي هاي اللباجلة هاي you know, هاي نقدر نحصلها في كارفور. You know, they think it's peas.
Yeah.
شلون الحين أنت تقنع هاي الناس إنه come on, this is different. It was a bit challenging. It was different. فقمنا إيش سوينا? On a daily basis we used to do samples all the time. Samples with the flavor, spicy, sweet, salty, كل شيء. شوي بدينا نشوف okay, there is demand now. People are understanding the benefits. كنا we're trying to promote the nutritional benefits always. فكان عندنا ناس, we have a mosque literally outside the mall. بالضبط يخلصون الصلاة يجون and they literally have a snack on it, and you'll be surprised. يعني the age group is adults, kids, teenagers.
نفس اللي كانوا يقولون باجلة الحين يوم شاهين.
Exactly. والله العظيم. يعني أنا أقول the time لما me and my partner we went to pitch the idea to the mall, I swear to God, like one of the guys there قاعد يطالعنا كذي إنه are you guys serious يعني? They actually thought that we're going to fail like in no time. صدق يعني, I'm being serious. So
yeah.
we proved to them إنه لا يعني it's a totally new concept and it is working. الحمد it is working. وصار في إقبال after people like realizing the benefits of it, and the taste is actually good, and said to go snack you can have it anytime. يعني إذا أنت يوعان بس مو يوعان تبي خاطرك في شيء صغير, edamame is really nice. It's really good for it. And then by time قررنا okay, now since يعني the ice cream, the mochi ice cream, we also had it in the beginning but no one knew about it again. كان مخشوش. كان عندنا فريزر صغير شذي ما يبين حتى. So we were like, okay, now this is the time we need to invest in a very proper freezer display, and we need to extend our kiosk, make it even bigger. So we spoke to the mall, قلنا لهم okay, we need another like another meter like lengthwise. فقالنا okay, but the rent will be higher. قلنا, you know what, it's okay, we'll take this high because we really believe in presenting your product in the right way will bring you the revenue you need. And it's true, when we actually kept a freezer display, كان في lights داخل وكل شيء مرتب وهاي, suddenly now people are trying this product. أما قبل ما حد كان يعرف إن it exists with us. You know? So some of the challenges we faced إن مثلا especially كبنية or like women in the industry of business, يعني I had to learn a lot of things. For example, الحين when it comes to freezers, to machines, etc., I had to learn exactly how to unscrew things to clean the filter, you know, do it myself, just for the fact that I don't want this thing to break down, because we faced a lot of losses just from freezer breakdowns before, you know.
You should teach me one day, maybe.
والله I literally do videos, show my staff إن أنتوا بعد تعلموا لأن خلاص by time you guys have to do this on a weekly basis.
That's amazing صراحة. That's very inspiring, to be honest.
Thank you. Thanks. وكنا بعدين بدينا في events. Now when we started in events, Anna and my husband, we were doing it alone. We didn't have an employee. We were literally doing it alone. And our first event was in Bahrain pop-up market. It was in Courtyard. وكان عندنا ما شاء الله the queue was very long. People were excited إنه هاي شيء غير you know. The queue was very long. It was a challenging thing إنه يعني it's the first experience for us as an event. We literally ran off edamame packets. I called my mom, Mama, صرتي بندي, you know. It was crazy يعني وما شاء الله مسكينة أمي يعني جابت لنا like edamame packets and يعني she was supportive all the time, you know. And then especially when it came to the events, we realized a lot of things. We realized that end of the day, احنا نعد edamame packets that we sold, and then نعد الفلوس اللي تجينا نقول it doesn't make sense. How does يعني المفروض أكثر يعني when like considering the price, considering everything. And then we realized that we weren't controlling our portions correctly. يعني ما كان عندنا شيء اسمه portion control, which is يعني weird because you're in an F&B industry, you have to have that anyway. كنا بس نعتمد بال like eyesight, you know, like okay, I'm just gonna take a bunch of edamame using I don't know how many hard. And then by the time we realized, come on, like we're giving away our money. Actually, we're not making any profit.
Yeah.
فبعدين قررنا نجيب weighing scale and everything is measured. All of the sauces are measured properly. وحتى الedamame is like 100 grams. الناس بدأت تضحك علينا إنه are you serious? You're measuring the edamame? I go like, yeah, you have to. It's more controlled. Yeah.
It's a business eventually.
Exactly. I don't want to take too long. يعني في وايد أشياء. But I mean, these are the things we went through, and this is my story. And until today, يعني مثل ما قلت, sometimes you get that burnout feeling. You get tired because you're working 24/7. You're working until night. But this is what it takes, really.
Yeah. And do you regret quitting and starting this?
Not really, not really. يعني now I'm looking into bigger things. يعني not only kiosks. I'm looking into production, food production, like things related to mommy.
And I love how we talked about this. So what you did also applies to the same concepts that we were talking about yesterday in terms of taking it one step at a time and then developing the business as you go and figuring things out as you go and getting feedback and then changing and fixing, which in my opinion is the right way to do any type of business. So like I mentioned yesterday, it doesn't only apply to startups or tech and websites. It applies to any literally business that is out there.
Yeah.
So thank you صراحة Fida for sharing. I love the story. It's very inspiring and it's very interesting as well. So I think we're about to finish in 3 minutes, but if anyone wants to hang out for the next 15 minutes, I didn't time the presentation properly. So I'm loving صراحة hearing your stories. And if people do want to stay on and share beyond the 9 o'clock, so for around 15 minutes, we'll do that. I'll wrap up my presentation in a couple of slides. So just to remind you about the mentorships. So you can apply for a couple of mentorship opportunities that are out there. And also send your resume to workshops@startupmagazine.com. And basically, I'm mixing internships and so for internships, so we do have a couple of internships that you can apply to. In terms of mentorship, so I'm supposed to do mentorships with 5 people up to 2 hours each. So if you're interested in either getting mentorship from me or just getting my feedback on things or just having a chat about your business or what you want to do or how you want to do things, do apply on workshops@startupmagazine.com. And we can definitely do beyond the 2 hours if needed. So I always love to help people and get them to do things in a different way. So definitely do apply and I'll be looking forward to basically having these sessions with you. So yeah, if anyone else wants to share, we can stay around for another 15 minutes. Anyone who wants to leave at this point, thank you so much for attending. Hope that the session was beneficial to you guys and that I tried to do my best in order to cover both early stage and give general examples, share my own experience, and also go into maybe a later stage and be comprehensive about it. So if you have any feedback, if you have any questions, if you need anything, you can contact the Startup Magazine team directly and they will help and guide you. For now, we can stay for the next 15 to 20 minutes, and anyone who wants to also share their own stories, experience, challenges, questions, feel free to go on. So if nobody's going to talk, I'm going to mention, so Varsha sent a message on the Q&A, which is completely fine if you want to share that as well. So she says, hi, thank you so much for an informative session. She's a finance background, and after hearing my story, she feels further motivated to start her own business. I'm very happy to hear that, and hopefully we can also catch up to see what things you should be looking out for. So she has experience working on back-end of multiple e-commerce platforms with the intention of doing something different. So Varsha quit her job last month and has started taking courses of WordPress and graphic designing to gain more knowledge. And she has a raw idea currently on to start a small e-store. So she needs a couple of tips in this regard. First of all, it's a big step that you've taken to quit your job. If you think that was your job was maybe limiting you, or you want to spend more time, I'm very happy to hear that, and hopefully it does work out for you. If not, then don't have any regrets, because whatever you learn from this experience, you'll manage to use in a much better way. So don't have any regrets on doing that. Jobs come and go, but what you're doing now in terms of learning and self-development is intangible in terms of the value it will bring. So in terms of starting a small e-store, I'm not sure if you have an idea about what type of business you want to start, Varsha. So if you don't, what I would tell you is start analyzing the market, start studying the market in order to realize what e-store concepts would work best in Bahrain. Based on that, start studying furthermore and identify a couple of ideas that you want to experiment with. Once you do that, go with the step-by-step, the startup journey we talked about yesterday. So do your market research properly, start talking to people, start doing small experiments, and then based on that, you'll know exactly how to start building your own e-store and what type of customer base that you need. Then once you do that, again, start experimenting on a small scale, get feedback from customers, keep talking to customers, keep getting their feedback. And then based on that, you can take it one step at a time in terms of building it step by step and going from there. So take it day by day at this point. And then at points you look at yourself after a month and realize that you've learned so much. So it's always important to keep some context and to keep learning day by day. And as you keep doing it and as you keep getting at it, you're going to see that there's a huge difference between your capabilities a month ago and now. So good luck, all the best, to be honest. Again, if you need to have any mentorship sessions or any questions, you can contact workshops at startupmagazine.com, and I'll be happy to connect there. So Raneem says that she's a fresh university graduate and she's hoping to start her own startup. And she's wondering if she should state that she's working on her own startup while applying for a job. To be honest, there is no right answer here because it will depend on the company you're interviewing at. Personally, if you come to me and you do tell me that, hey, I'm working on my own thing, I would welcome it because I would then try to help you and guide you. And as long as you're doing your job properly with me, I'm not going to mind what you're doing in your free time. But then some companies might mind that and might think that, hey, she's going to quit in a month or two and then go start her own thing. So it really depends on the type of people you're interviewing at. In general, my point of view, could be right, could be wrong, is that nobody should tell you what you do in your own free time. As long as you're going to your job and doing your hours and and doing all what is required of you. It's like you, مثلا, watching TV shows or going to the movies or going out with friends. You're working on your own thing on the side. Like Fida said, so she started with doing both at the same time. And even after she told them, she did also part-time with them. So it depends on the company and who you're interviewing with. So Salma has a question. So would a tech recruiting online company be a good idea here in Bahrain? She doesn't have a real insight into the Bahraini tech market needs, and she saw this idea in other countries and got excited about it. In general, I definitely think that if you manage to, basically in Bahrain, we don't have as many people into tech and development as we need right now, which is why a lot of companies in Bahrain are finding developers from outside, from India, from Pakistan, from Ukraine, because they're not finding good quality developers in Bahrain. So what I would suggest to you is that you can contact a couple of groups in Bahrain. You have the Google Developers Group run by Lana Al-Attar in Bahrain. So she deals with a lot of university students, and she also trains a lot of developers in Bahrain. And you can get more of an insight about how the market is looking in terms of tech talent, and if you can bridge that gap. To be honest, if you manage to bridge that gap, I would definitely think that there is a huge opportunity for this here, because talk to any startup, talk to any tech company, and they'll tell you that they are looking to find Bahraini talent in tech, but they're not being able to find them. So honestly, yes, to be honest, I think that if you can manage to bridge that gap, it would be amazing. Okay, anyone else wants to maybe share? So I'll give it another minute or two, and then if we're not, then we're done. Okay, guys, so thank you so much again for attending. And if you do have further questions or anything that you want to ask about, do get in touch with Startup Magazine, and they would help, and I'd also love to help with whatever you need. Thank you again, and have a good night.